Uh, Hi everyone. This is Himanshu here from Eckovation. Uh,
Hi guys.
uh, Hi everyone. This is Himanshu here from Eckovation. So I'll give you a brief about Rohit, and then we can take it forward from there, right? So yeah. So Rohit is the founder and CEO of Earth Venue, and like he aims to make the world a better place by solving some of the toughest problems that are impacting us in our day-to-day lives. So you can say him as a philanthropist. You can say him as one of the person who wants to who strives to become a polymath. As you know, he believes that only knowledge and passion can really only knowledge and passionate people can run a technological firm successfully. So he's a person who wants to solve problems that are impacting people in day-to-day lives, and that is why he has brought up this firm and called Worth Venue, and he's striving to solve problems through blockchain and more technological changes. So currently he's working towards digital payments, blockchain, and how people can get more power to the businesses using blockchain, and he's studying on how climate is affecting people in day-to-day lives. So I'll leave the stage to Rohit now to just give a brief about himself, and then we can have a few questions.
Sure. Thanks, Himanshu. I think that was very well said. And so, primarily, the three things that you described are the three things that I'm focusing on during the course of my startup journey throughout my life for the future. So, digital payments is one which I started off with, and that is the one was the closest we recently got acquired 2 years back for our technology and the team by a US-based company who wanted to disrupt the UPI-based payment space in India. And once that happened, I realized, okay, that now it's time using to move to the second one, which has been my focus ever since I realized the value of the power behind this technology, which is blockchain. So, and in blockchain, of course, India has not been a very friendly place, so to say, till now, which most of the people agree here. In terms of, one second, I think audio is, people are saying audio is not clear. I'll just try to speak louder. One
Yeah.
second. Right. So, for blockchain, what we are doing now is primarily starting to first from the point of dispelling all the myths, and trying to help people understand what blockchain really is. And the second is, once that gets done, of course, this is a task in itself, is to really help them understand what are the real life applications of blockchain in business scenarios. And
Mhm.
that is the second primary goal of the company. So, as a company, we are mostly helping people understand the concepts, dispel the myths, and really apply at an industry level, right, for real life application. That's what we're focusing on right now. For sustainability, I think it's too soon to discuss right now, but at a high level, the goal there is to see if all the civilizations and all the places in the world can be made habitable for anyone, so that nobody ever needs to shift from their origin or place or anything. But as I said, I mean, I think it's too soon to discuss that right now. I haven't yet delved into it full time, and I haven't formed the solution quite full time. So we'll come to that later on.
Sure. So actually, I had a couple of questions to start with, and so I'll just shoot a couple of questions so that we can get the discussion underway. The first question is actually regarding blockchain itself. So it goes like
Yeah, sure.
So what are your basic thoughts on blockchain
Absolutely.
being a solution to a problem? Like how it can be a solution to the problems that we are facing right now?
Sure, sure. So a lot of people have actually commented that blockchain has been perceived as a solution or a technology which is trying to look for a problem to solve. However, we strongly disagree. Being on the application side, and since we have actually implemented real life use cases, and we have seen people using it in different phases of actual business and industry use cases. So if I really see from a use case perspective and where the just does the each other when they don't have any option, right? So I think a classic prime example for that is the banking scenario, banking sector, in the world. There, if you notice, we are primarily trusting the banks and all the intermediaries, be it a loan provider, loan agent, insurance agent, anyone, so to say, because we don't have any other alternative, right? So if there was an actual alternative which was mathematically verifiable and automated way of working for the same use cases that you do on banking right now, there'd be no need for an intermediary like a bank, right? So that's use
Yeah,
case number one, right? Then use case number two for the future, which is actually the one that we have already implemented in Singapore, but is yet to catch force in overall, at a mass level, is the insurance industry or the insurance claims. So again, a classic case, where you have to place your trust in the person, the hospital, the insurer, the insurance company, and the intermediary, which is the TPAs or the admins, so to say, which are processing the claims. Now, there again, you have to make sure that okay, all your bills are verified, all the invoices get reconciled, and only then you will get the insurance claim processed. So this is also one classic use case which is ripe for disruption. No need to trust so many humans. Humans always have policies. They don't have the right incentives at all times, and the incentives also are not aligned with each other at all times. So it's best if we can just automate the whole scenario there. So these are the two classic use cases that I see. Of course, we can speak more on the use cases as we go along.
yeah, sure. So the second question again would be, that so you started both when you, as we already know that the insured tech solutions is beginning to gain recognition in India and globally also. So if you could
Right.
just tell a little bit more about the problems that you guys are trying to solve and what role does blockchain play in the solution?
Sure, sure. So the first use case that we did was the insurance use case, where what we have done recently is that we have unified different claims and different policy structures on a single platform, right?
Okay.
So what we're doing there, think of it as if you're a customer and you have bought a health insurance policy from, say, an insurer A, and you want to claim it at, say, a hospital B. Now, with one single click, in a couple of minutes, you can actually get your claim approved instead of
Okay.
submitting all the documents manually, printing it out, taking a photocopy, and then waiting for a couple of hours or even a few days at times. So that's one of the most crucial, I would say, and the most successful use cases that we have solved till now at a mass level. Apart from that, there are a couple more that we are doing in the pipeline. For example, we are also working with logistics providers, supply chain, companies. For example, in the domain of retail, B2B retail, B2B commerce as well. And the objective there is very simple that we want to enable traceability and predictability. That is, as an end user, you should be able to trace where your product came from, and you should be able to predict in real time that, okay, what will be the demand of this product as a seller in the future.
Okay.
Now, these are the things which people are trying to solve through AI as well, but if you really solve it through AI, it's still it's still at a centralized system in the sense that if your data gets hacked or if somebody compromises the control, if the data gets compromised, then literally the whole AI gets flopped. So while on a blockchain at a decentralized level, what happens is that all the participants in the ecosystem for that B2B commerce, the logistics and supply chain, that is your seller, vendor, retailer, distributor, all of them can see the data in real time and nobody can compromise it, right?
Oh.
So that's the value that comes in from blockchain point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think you asked about challenges. So, from a challenges point, there have been a lot of challenges, during the execution. The first one, of course, being simple education. Like how do you really make sure that people understand what blockchain really does, and most importantly, how do you make them understand that blockchain is not cryptocurrency? That's also very
Mm-hmm.
important. Most of people think that okay, blockchain means Bitcoin, right? So um, that has been the number one challenge, to be honest, right? And
Yeah.
once we get past that, then things become simpler. And thankfully, people are now becoming more educated and more involved with the ecosystem. So they really understand the technology behind Bitcoin. And they really understand that, okay, this is much more to do than just money movement from here and there. Once you understand that, then the other challenges are more workable because those are like implementation and technical challenges which can be solved.
Great, great. So I think that was pretty clear. Now, coming back to another question that I had in mind, that was, that you being such a veteran now in the field of blockchain. So what advice would you give to the growing blockchain community that is there in India?
Sure. Yeah, so I think number one would really be to understand the concept of the old principles. So, if I were to give a quotation here, this is something which I really love and follow as a philosophy for blockchain, is that if you notice, it's almost parallel to the way internet was working or the way internet came around, back in the day. For those of for those students and people who have actually gone through that phase
Yeah,
or are aware of that phase through books and videos and documentaries, they would know that when internet came around, it was actually dismissed as a flop idea,
yeah, definitely.
and it was right. So it was dismissed completely as something that only universities would use, or something that only governments would use. Now,
Mhm.
I think if you take that statement and if you compare the blockchain right now, it's almost at a similar domain where people are thinking, okay, this is
Mhm.
something maybe just the big institutes would use, and it would not really touch my life. Um, so that's a classic misconception, and people always it's very difficult for people to estimate things in the long term. It's hard for
Mhm.
people to do that. It's natural. It's just how human beings are wired. So what I would
Mhm.
really suggest, like as a first level of advice to the blockchain community, is to really keep your eyes and ears open, and understand the concepts from the basics, from the roots, and then try to justify or try to reason out on your own that whether the
Mhm.
particular blockchain application that you want to develop, use, or adopt makes sense or not.
Yeah.
So that is my, I would say, the primary advice that I can say here.
Great. So obviously advices are one side. Well, then coming to the legality part of the blockchain, we recently had
Mhm.
news coming out that anyone trading in Bitcoin can be jailed for 10 years, something like that.
Right,
So how
right, right.
important do you think is using this tokenomics into the blockchain platform? And since India has a strict no policy right now, so how damaging do you
Yeah.
think that these regulations could be to India and the blockchain environment?
Right, right, right. So, media is all about sensationalism, and I don't think you can take sensationalization and media away. That's
Mhm.
just how media is. So, I don't see that the media will learn. The media will try to spin out stories again and again, which will
Yeah.
be like that. So again, as I said, like from a root, advice, and from a root cause point of view, it's very important to understand why things are happening in that way, and why is the media doing it. So that's something that people don't normally do. People just get excited, okay, that oh, media has said this, and now all of us are doomed or something. But
Mhm.
it's very important to really go to the basics, like the first principles, the way Elon Musk describes it. So, like, really drill it down to the basics and then see, okay, then why are people doing like this, or why are people behaving like this? What specifically addressing this question of the bills and these announcements that keep coming in. First of all, of course, RBI actually dismissed that same thing the very next day, saying that
Mm-hmm.
okay, we have not, we are not in support of this, and we have not received anything of that kind. So it's just a proposal basically, and just a floating proposal that some people have floated around.
Yeah.
I don't see it materializing, primarily because cryptocurrencies and blockchain by default, they don't have any boundaries. That's the best part about it. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have any geographic boundaries. So it's just like if you say to an Indian citizen that hey, you cannot buy cryptocurrencies, he'll just go overseas, or he'll just route the money from somewhere overseas and try to do it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's just how, right. So people will not get restricted by that. In fact, that's actually dampening for India, for the economy, because then you
Mm-hmm.
lose out on all the monetization opportunities and also on users and people's trust. So I don't think that will fly.
Okay, great, great. So, like, this is just a last question that I had. So, do you think that these strict regulations can, like, hinder the adoption rate of blockchain, or by like providing a closed framework for the companies that are operating in the blockchain ecosystem? So, will it allow the blockchain tech to thrive in the future?
Right. Um, Right. I think definitely. I mean, it does have some sort of impact in the sense that people definitely start questioning that what we are doing or what the industry is doing. Is it actually viable in the long term? And
Hmm.
will the government support us? Will the people support us? As we go along. So I mean, these questions are valid, and it's natural for people to have these concerns. But as I said, from a pure technology and even from a pure implementation point of view, I don't see it as a major, hamper or major blocker in the path of blockchain's progress or cryptocurrency's progress. Cryptocurrency ownership might go down. Yes, people will start owning less cryptocurrencies, and people will start investing less in cryptocurrencies, which is actually good for the market, because right now, there was a lot of scams and just random ICOs and random investments that were happening. And actually,
Hmm.
that's where the most money goes lost, by the way. So people think that okay, most of the money gets lost because of hackers and frauds and all. Actually, not true.
Yeah.
If you take the history of like the most financial losses, in terms of
Hmm.
monetary value, the highest number of losses actually happen from poor decision making, and not
Okay.
from frauds.
Okay.
So it's actually a surprising thing for people. People think that it's the other way around, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, having said that, I mean, cryptocurrency ownership might go down, yes, but blockchain in itself as a technology, I don't see this to be a major blocker.
Okay. So yeah, these were some of the questions that I had. So I can leave the
Sure,
floor to you, and you can have a presentation
sure,
for all of our users.
sure, absolutely. So yeah, so I think apart from the primary things that we have discussed over this webinar, one of the things that I wanted to touch upon is the concept of cryptocurrency as a token of money. And this is something that, again, is sort of new to people, and people find it hard to adopt. Um, and the primary reason that I've noticed is that people are too attached to their past, and people are too attached to the old way of working. Or, in other words, people are too attached to the tangible assets that they own, and that's why you see a lot of cash flowing around the country. Now, if you notice, if you go down to the roots of how money came around, or how currency came around, it's actually just a notion of value from the mind of our collective human network. So, if tomorrow, say by miracle, or maybe sometime down the line, all of us decide that we will not define a dollar to be a dollar, or we will not define or assign any value to this particular currency, right? Or from now on, $100 does not mean $100. Now, from now on, $100 will mean $0, while one Bitcoin will mean $1,000. Now, potentially, that is just the way we are agreeing in principle, right? So it's just that we have a notional value that okay, $1 is equal to 60 rupees or 70 rupees, whatever, right? So as long as that notion is there, the money has value. But once that notion goes away, money has no value, right? So, and this is a concept that people find it hard to believe, primarily because they don't know how the monetary system came around, right? How does their currency came around? How did US dollar came around? Or how did Indian rupee came around? So, um, you know,
that's why I said, I think at the starting of our webinar as well, is that once you understand the basics and the origin of how blockchain and how cryptocurrencies have come around, and more importantly, how the fiat or the world currency currency systems in different parts of different parts of the world, they came around, then you begin to understand how do you really assign value to a currency or a cryptocurrency, and why cryptocurrency is going to end the banking system as we know it. Right now, this is actually a revolutionary statement. If you think from a from your children's point of view or your future generation point of view, they will never know what a bank was or what a bank is, and more importantly, they will never be able to understand why do you need a bank or why did you need a bank in the past. So that this is a very a high-handed concept, and it's a difficult thing to digest whenever you tell to somebody, especially the older generations. So I would really suggest to ponder upon this thing. And of course, there are a couple more anecdotes that I can share on the same thought, but broadly, this is one thought that I would really love all of you to think and take away from this webinar. And the reason this is important to think is because most of the solutions to the futures, for those of you who are aspiring entrepreneurs or product leaders, or want to be CEOs, CDOs of companies in the future, it's very important to really be where the puck is going to be. In Steve Jobs' words, you don't start from the point, okay, that I have the hockey stick and I am going to take the puck from origin A. No, you say, okay, the puck is already going to B. How do I really get to B faster? Right. So it's important to understand what the point B is. And this is the point B for cryptocurrencies, that they are going to eliminate all the banks, whether let's take the case of your identity, right? What really is an identity, right? For example, my second very important thought on the same lines of blockchain are just numbers at the end of the day, and numbers and characters at the end of the day. So, and again, as I said, it's a collective notion. It's a collective notion that has been agreed upon by government, central government, state government, and maybe national governments, international governments. That okay, this is the way of defining this person's identity. That's how the passport came out. Right now, if I digitize that whole passport and put it on a decentralized ledger, saying that okay, from now on, we will not consult a central repository or a central database for your identity. Your identity is now decentralized and is owned by you. So you can define whether you want to give me control or not, and everything you do on your records, during your lifetime, will get added as your track record on the ledger, right? Which is immutable. Now, can you imagine what kind of a world that would be, where everything you do gets documented automatically, transparently, and maybe in some cases it's transparent completely to the world, and in some cases you have the choice to share with the world or not. Now, that's again a radical notion to think of, but it's coming sooner than you think, and it's going to happen again in one form or another. So again, coming to the imagination part, you can see that this will completely change the behavior of anybody in the system. Why? Because till now you could get away with things, right? In the future, you may not. So how would the behavior change of nations? Nations would behave very differently. Why? Because then you could just transport yourself from one nation to another nation simply because you came to know, okay, that this nation is not behaving transparently or ethically. Same ways with the humans. So these are the things that I really want you to consider, since I know many of you are students and aspiring entrepreneurs, writers, coders, developers. That's the future you're going to create, one way or another, either yourself or as being part of another company. So the sooner you understand it, the better it is. Happy to hear your thoughts, on our webinar, and of course, future sessions as well. So just to leave all of you with one more information, I think there are a couple of questions that have come in. I'll just answer that on the chat. Yeah, can blockchain be used for environment conservation? Interesting. I haven't thought of it that way. But I mean, if you take the second point which I described, where everything of a person or an entity or an organization, every action, every record gets tracked digitally and transparently across the whole ecosystem. If that happens, then yes, potentially yes. That's actually a very important step in terms of environmental conservation. Why? Because if you notice, much of the harm to the environment has actually been caused by sole focus of multiple nations and multiple organizations on profits, right? So, in other words, they have taken capitalism too far, right? So, if we can actually rectify, some of that using a transparent ledger, of course, there will be, huge resistance and everything. How it works out and whether everybody is on board or not is a different debate altogether. I don't think we'll be able to cover that, but yes, I think that is one thought that could help us on the environmental side. Um, then we have, what's the future of machine learning? So I think machine learning, in general, is a very different and diverse topic from what we are covering here in terms of blockchain. But having said that, there are some interesting things that you can consider in the combination of blockchain and machine learning. And the reason I say that is because till now, you only had one central system or one central repository of data to learn from. Now, if that same data gets decentralized, and on top of that, you have your smart contract, which is basically your smart logic, which takes actions on its own and is verifiable, auditable, self-verifiable, self-executable. That's how typically a smart contract is defined. Once that happens, then what we are saying is, okay, till now the machine or your computer was only able to learn from a certain data set, but now, along with learning, it can also implement these smart contracts along the way, right, across your blockchain. Now, that is something which is hard to imagine right now, and hard to also envisage right now, because we haven't reached that maturity in terms of machine learning and even in terms of blockchain yet. But yes, I mean, eventually, sooner or later, it's going to happen, primarily because both of these fields are growing very rapidly. But as I said in the early, at the start of this conversation, that machine learning in itself is very different from blockchain. All right, so I think rumors and all we have already discussed. Yeah, this is also an interesting comment where, yeah, you can use it for conservation of forest areas, just like land registries. Then there's another question on, okay, how to implement blockchain when there's no data discipline. Okay. I think what you're referring to, if I understand correctly, is when people are not maintaining their data records in the right form, if I'm not wrong. I think that's what is being referred to here. So, yeah, I think that is going to be hard. You're right. That's a good question. But I mean, from a implementation point of view, if you are on the implementation side of blockchain and the company or the organization for which you're implementing blockchain, if they're not really disciplined about their data and they don't have the right data format to begin with, it's going to be very hard. So the first step will definitely be digitization and proper recording of data. Once that gets established, then yes, you could reach to the next stage and say, okay, that yes, now we are at stage 2 of implementation, where this data that has been recorded needs to be decentralized, right? And then stage 3 comes in, okay, that can we add automated logic and self-verifiable logic in the form of smart contracts on top of it. Right, I think yeah, then we have, okay, what all tools are required to start with blockchain. So I think from a learning point of view, um, you don't need so many tools per se. What you need is depends again what you want to learn. So if I take it from the starting, say the concepts, the basic concepts of blockchain, then you can just get started by a lot of blogs, a lot of slides. We have like Eckovation has a course, I believe, and Birth Venue as an organization also has a lot of slides that we've covered on our SlideShare channel, and also a lot of blogs on our Medium blog. So we covered a lot of topics varying from real life applications to cryptocurrencies to the future applications, the future possible applications. So yeah, whole variety of blogs and information is there. So I think that's a good place to start, because once you have that type of information in terms of where blockchain really sinks in the real life, then you can go on to technical implementation. For that, as long as you have a decent understanding of any of these languages, Node.js, Python, Java, the couple of languages which are supported by different blockchain frameworks, and different off-the-shelf blockchains, you could use them. Yeah. Then, how do I identify a blockchain fit in? So I think, yeah, so this question we have already discussed. It's basically based on the trust factor. So there are a couple of other questions that you could ask the organization, but primarily this is the first and foremost. That is the data something that is very sensitive, and at the same time, is the data something that you want to share across different stakeholders, and are there opportunities or are there possibilities of multiple parties updating the data? So if the answer to all of these three is yes, then ideally you are in the stage of blockchain implementation. That means that yes, you should definitely consider blockchain as a solution. Oh, so one more question. So will security testing for blockchain be a separate vertical in itself? I think it will be, primarily because I think if you notice, blockchain has a very different architecture. If we go on the architecture and implementation side, blockchain is actually rethinking your whole architecture of an application. So till now, maybe you were, just like any other application, you had a client and a server. So, but now there's no client and no server, right? So what's happening is, okay, that you have multiple peers which actually behave as nodes, and information is flowing freely between these peers on a peer-to-peer fashion, right? That's why it's the peer-to-peer architecture. So to give you an example, let's say if we consider the same logistics use case. Now, the supply chain information of that product, when it's flowing from point A to point B, that is shared across all devices, be it IoT devices, be it a tablet in that truck or the car, be it the smartphone of the driver, smartphone of the vendor, the ERP systems which are sitting on desktops inside the warehouse. All of these are nodes, right? So now information is flowing across in a peer-to-peer fashion. So there's no central server which is responsible for the maintenance and storage of data, right? What you have is a collection of these nodes that need to auto maintain and auto update themselves. And the way they do it is the consensus protocols. So that's the, like the next level of information that you can actually explore when you go to study blockchain. But yes, I mean, having said that, since this is a completely new architecture, and security in itself is a very sensitive topic, and also because a lot of companies implement blockchain primarily due to security. So that's why I think this will definitely be a different vertical. Then awareness of the question. Okay, how will you use blockchain to maintain work in progress or logistics domain to manage the accessibility product? So yeah, I think this we can discuss offline. We actually are doing a similar use case right now for a couple of companies in India, and yeah, happy to share our email ID on the chat, and we can have a conversation on the same. Yeah, I think we've covered most of the questions here. Yeah. So just try and see if I can pull this up 1 second. Okay. Yeah, there it is. So just sharing this one with you. This is basically sort of the key blockchain features that are present, in any blockchain. And since we are on the topic of, real life applications, and more importantly, the future. So that's why it's very important to really understand the kind of potential and the kind of value that this technology can bring in to all the applications that you have, right? So if you go through these one by one, decentralization, immutability, permissioning, and customizing, uh, all of these are actually sort of just like, in a way we can describe them as, okay, 4 legs of a stool, and all these 4 are very important to the end use case. Let's take the decentralization. So I think this is pretty much described in detail, where we are saying, okay, instead of storing it at one central place, we are now storing data in multiple nodes. So there's no central control, through a federation or something. On the other hand, then you have immutability. Now, immutability is primarily a byproduct of the way decentralization and the way consensus is embedded in blockchain. So immutability says, okay, that now you are not able to edit or modify any of the data that you had, right? You cannot delete data. So you can only append and add information. That's immutability. Permissioning, so you can basically define, this is a classic use case of private blockchains, where you can define permissions at user level, saying that, okay, I will only allow this particular level of information to flow between these peers, right? That's permissioning, and that's very useful for industries where you're looking for private blockchains. And then you have customizability, where it's basically more of the application logic that you can write on top of blockchain using smart contracts, and even the general private network that you can build in using custom transactions, custom permissions. So you can define, okay, that what type of blockchain it should be and how the flow of information should happen within the blockchain. That's customizability. So I think I would leave you with this, slide, and the two radical thoughts which we discussed. How money is just a notion of value, and second, how your identity is just a notion of digits and characters, and how they can be replaced and disrupted. Right? I think we'll just call Himanshu back. Okay. Yeah. By the way, this slides that you're seeing are right from our slide share. So feel free to follow. We keep publishing both educational content and application-driven content on it, and our team has been pretty solid in terms of pushing regular updates on the same. So we'll be sharing this link as well as part of the webinar.
Yeah, hi, Rohit.
So people are asking for the email ID. I'll just mention the email ID here. On the group chat.
Sure.
So feel free to drop an email here if you would love, you would want to learn more about blockchain or webinars, any education content, or if you just want to collaborate for a particular use case, happy to discuss. And most importantly, of course, thanks to Eckovation for helping us organize this second webinar. We'll keep doing this in the future as well, and happy to collaborate with more partners along the way. Eckovation, by the way, is a great place for people who are willing to learn, looking to learn for different kinds of courses, different kinds of certificates, and more importantly, just upskill themselves in different domains, even blockchain. So wonderful place. Please feel free to visit their website as well and check out their content.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much, Rohit, for your all the knowledge and wisdom that you have given to our viewers right now. And we hope that we can have more such
All right,
webinars
guys.
in the
I
future.
think that's it from us. Thanks a lot. You've been a great audience. Feel free to share more questions on the email ID or the chat as well. Happy to hear from you. Thank you.